Are we waiting on anybody else, or is that everybody?
I believe John is going to join us as well, but we can go ahead and start.
And you don't have anybody from Parks today? It's just everybody. Okay. All right. Thank you, Linda. We get on Facebook too now? All right. We're back from our executive session. Thank you for rejoining. Item number 3 on the agenda is the COVID response discussion. Ms. Wagner, this one I believe is yours.
Yes, I'll just highlight some information included in the packet. At the meeting on September 7th, the board requested that we provide information on current response from an employee perspective to COVID and specifically related to information to assist the board in review of vaccine requirements for city employees. Currently, we are requiring employees to wear masks anytime that they are away from their desk or cannot maintain 6 feet distance in a enclosed setting. Outdoors, we're not requiring masks unless employees come in contact with the public. If 2 employees ride in the same vehicle, they're required to wear their masks. We are trying to reduce the number of in-person meetings by recommending Zoom and other formats to address those meetings. In group meetings, we are requiring masks in the building. We currently have no requirements related to vaccine in effect. Staff has been allowed to take time to receive the vaccines. And in the case of any adverse reaction to the vaccine, employees have been allowed time off for that as well. If you all will recall, at the beginning of the pandemic, there was leave time required through federal law that expired at the end of last year. And we extended that in the city through this summer. That has been eliminated. We do continue to follow CDC guidelines relating to quarantine. So at this point in time, following the CDC information, if a vaccinated individual has close contact with a COVID positive individual, close contact for CDC right now is defined as within 6 feet for a period of 15 minutes cumulative over a 24-hour period. Vaccinated employees are not required to quarantine. Unvaccinated individuals are. So at this point in time, if an employee has a close exposure and they are vaccinated, they do return to work. The CDC does require masking in that instance. And so our work requirements for masking already kick in there. If an employee is not vaccinated, they are required to quarantine at home. At this point in time, because we eliminated the administrative time, any situation where someone is either quarantining or has tested positive for COVID, they are using their own accrued sick or vacation time. Any questions on where we are, what we're doing right now?
Yeah, I have 2 quick ones. Do we have any corrective action for people that are caught not masking or consistently not properly wearing a mask or anything like that?
We have not been very strict, I guess I would say. People are reminded. I think for the most part, when they're reminded, they become compliant for a period of time. They have to be reminded again. But we have not cracked down on discipline.
Do we have, or how's our numbers been this year? Do we have anybody out quarantined now, or are we going to have, we had quite a few this year, or has it been?
It's kind of been, it's ebbed and flowed. We currently have 2 employees in quarantine, one due to an exposure and one, I wouldn't go full quarantine because actually he came in symptomatic this morning, but actually took a test and is negative. So once his symptoms resolve, he'll be able to come back. It had been a while since we had anyone. It really does kind of come in dribs and drabs, for lack of a better term. We have had situations where we have had quarantine or exposure in, I believe, every department in the organization. Most of those exposures have come outside of work, sometimes at work-related activities. But I think the last time we had an exposure, we had one employee who was exposed at a work-related meeting, luncheon related to their profession. And that was in August. So we average probably 1 to 3 tops a month. We did earlier this summer have 2 employees in one department who were out sick with COVID. So we've kind of responded throughout.
Anybody else? Any other questions from anyone else on the board? All right, open up discussion on what next steps.
Actually, can I continue to provide some of the information? I want to make sure if there were any questions on that. I do want to make sure and outline what's included in the memo currently. And I was really surprised by this. We had not asked employees until last week their vaccination status. And I was pleasantly surprised that we have 63% of employees citywide who are vaccinated. That's not 100%, that's not 95%, but it is a good percentage. And compared to Clay County and the state of Missouri, it is higher. According to the state's COVID dashboard, as of last Thursday, 37.5% of Clay Countyans were fully vaccinated, and just under 47% of Missourians were fully vaccinated. So our 63% has us significantly higher than that.
Is that 37% of eligible, not just total population, just who's eligible, since kids still aren't eligible in most cases?
That I believe was of the eligible adults. I'd have to double check that. Yeah. In those conversations, department directors did talk with staff a little bit, and a handful of employees have indicated that they have plans to be vaccinated. They've just not gotten around to it, or are convalescing from COVID and have plans as soon as they are out of that convalescence window and get an all clear from their doctor, they will get the vaccine. Another small group indicated some type of incentive could encourage vaccination. And then a final group indicated that they could potentially seriously consider resignation if a mandate were instituted. Linda, Anna, and I have reached out to contacts in our clerks network, HR network, and city managers network across the state and metro area. And included in your packet is response to questions particularly related to vaccine mandates, but also just in general, what people would provide related to COVID response. As I indicated, that information is included in your packet as the memo outlines, really kind of across the board. Not included in this information is because they are counties. We do know that Johnson County in Kansas and Jackson County on Missouri have instituted vaccine mandates. On the Missouri side, and in our research throughout all the communities that we contacted, 2 communities or municipalities have instituted vaccine mandates. Those are Webster Groves and Maryland Heights, both on the St. Louis side. Those were adopted in August and will take effect at the end of this month in order to allow people the time to become fully vaccinated. One piece of information that's not included in your memo, and because I have what I refer to as an unpaid analyst that it lives in my household who works for another community. My husband is an employee of the city of Lawrence, Kansas, and on Friday they received communication from their human resources department that effective, I think it dates back to mid-August, but effective that Friday update, they will be reinstating COVID leave time for vaccinated employees who happen to contract breakthrough case. So their leave time would be covered if vaccinated. Unvaccinated employees would still be required to utilize their accrued time. They also noted in that communication that they will soon be implementing a requirement for testing for all unvaccinated employees. They have not worked out the details on that and shared that, but those are the steps that Lawrence is taking at this point in time. And as I said, that information came in after we had provided this information to you. Couple things to consider if we do mandate vaccines. And an employer must pay for the vaccine as well as the time to get the vaccine, which we have done previously through non-mandated requirements. If an employee does have a negative reaction to the vaccine, it likely would be covered under workers' comp. If an employee does opt out, or if there is a requirement for testing, the employer would need to cover the cost of testing and any costs related on that. If a mandate is something that the board would like to proceed with, we'd like to ensure that we have a timeline outlined on that, what proof will be required in those type of issues. I guess I've outlined some other considerations here as well, and I don't make a recommendation in the staff memo. From a staff perspective and administratively, I have concerns with a mandate. While my personal belief may be that as many people that can be vaccinated should be, I have concern about employee morale and employee response to that, particularly when we're trying to recruit employees. I would prefer that we try to encourage vaccination through other means. I personally like what Lawrence is doing to incentivize vaccinations by encouraging those to do the right thing. And if something were to happen, to provide that time. Testing potentially could be an option. But from the perspective of staff in implementing a mandate and for what that might look like to employee perception, I do have concerns.
Thank you. Anything else, or anybody have questions for Cynthia? Hey, Jack, good job on 100% in your department. That's you guys deal with the public quite a bit, so that's a good thing. And same thing with administration. I know front desk and such those are good numbers. And Chief, your numbers looking good too. So everybody's, I mean, yeah, like you said, our numbers higher except for in one department. But I'll open up the floor. Recommendations for staff.
I mean, I would just like to say that I agree with Cynthia. I just, as much as I'm vaccinated, I think people should be vaccinated, but I just feel if we make it mandated and someone has an adverse effect and they have chronic long-term issues, I just don't want to be responsible for that. I don't want that on my shoulders as a mandate.
I agree. We don't need a mandate.
I concur. I would like to see testing for those who have not been vaccinated on a regular basis. That's just something that I think is necessary. But John, go ahead. I'm done. That's.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I mean, I'm not necessarily in favor of a mandate for like just your general staff population, but the one area that I'm really torn on and is with the police, in that, you know, they go into people's houses and they do way much more interactivity with the community, and like so many, like, you know, other avenues of life, like nurses, hospitals, and things like that. I mean, they're mandating it for kind of similar reasons. Is that, you know, they're out there and they're, you know, dealing with all kinds of different patients. So I mean, I guess the gist of it, you know, is that the board probably doesn't feel the mandate is required or necessary. And if we're not going to do that, then I really think that we need to increase some sort of, penalties for those that aren't wearing masks on a regular basis when they're out in public. And then also maybe look at some other things like, reinstating the having COVID leave for those that are vaccinated. Obviously, weekly testing, I think, is going to have to happen for those not vaccinated. And then, is there some way maybe we can do like a medical discount on premiums or something like that if they do have a vaccine, or just any other kind of benefit discounts that we can give?
You weigh in on that. You were muted.
Yeah, Reddick, you're muted.
That would be problematic. I'm very skeptical that we could do that. One, we're not the insurer and the manager of that. But for many other reasons, I think that's a potential issue. So that causes
Right.
me some heartburn.
Okay. And one other thing is, I know it's kind of a sensitive subject right now, especially since what had happened to our community recently. But if you look at the Officer Down Memorial page where they tally the officers that have been killed in the line of duty or died in the line of duty, if you look at 2018, there were 187 deaths. 2019, there was 151. In the year 2020, there was 372 deaths. That jumped, that more than doubled. And 243 out of those were COVID-19 related. 2021, there's 282, and 167 are COVID related. So that's just right there. I mean, it kind of shows that, I feel like we should, as a community, want to care more for our officers and make sure that they're safe and not having this issue. So that's kind of what I was thinking as well.
John, I respect your statistics, but people need to make their own decision what they want to do. If they want to go out in harm's way, okay. If they don't feel they're in harm's way, okay. I mean, you can't make somebody listen to your opinion or my opinion or the mayor's opinion. You just got to let them do what they got to do.
Alderman Sarver.
Well, I'm probably the lone wolf here because I'm probably for mandates. 6 months ago, we were starting to get vaccines and our numbers started going down. We were still masking. We were still pretty much social distancing, but the numbers went down. At the time, the experts said, we've got to get a certain number of people vaccinated. We have to. If we don't, another variant's going to come up a few months down the road and we're going to have it all over again. Well, here we are. We've had it again. We're having a new variant. It's more transmittable. It's more transmittable to children. Luckily, our vaccines work. And so the vaccinated people aren't dying from it. Unvaccinated people, 99% of people in our hospitals are unvaccinated. So we're in the same boat right now. If we don't get people vaccinated, are we going to keep having another variant? Maybe the next variant's going to be more transmittable. Maybe the vaccine won't work, or maybe it'll be even worse for children. We don't know. But as long as there's a large amount of unvaccinated people out there, variants could keep coming. So rather than being done with this in a couple of months, we might not be done with this for years. So at some point, I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm on the wrong side of history here. But at some point, we have to face the facts. We may have to do something to stop this. Just my opinion, I may be wrong.
Thanks, Alderman Sarver. Alderman Uladol or Alderman Hartman, anything else to add?
I'm not for, at this time, forcing anybody to get vaccinated. I do believe it would be in their best interest to get vaccinated. I'm vaccinated. Now, I was one of the guys that said I'm not going to do that until some time has passed. Now we're at some time has passed, and more factual data has come out about what's in it, what it is, what's going on. And a lot of these people that I've talked to are still saying the same thing they said originally. I'm not going to put that in my body. Well, we're running into more and more cases where now I'm safe, but you're not whenever somebody comes coughing by you. So I don't know. Some of these people need to see the light. More people need to just get it taken care of. A couple of days later, you're fine. So I'm kind of on the fence. I don't want to force anybody to do it at this time.
So would anybody be opposed as a first step to work on a draft policy similar to what Ms. Wagner mentioned they're doing in Lawrence?
Yes.
I think that's great.
I would
then-
agree to something like that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then see where we stand in a month or so.
Agree.
So Wagner, do you have the direction you need from the board?
I believe so.
Thank you. Any other discussion on this, or is everybody good to move on to the next item on the agenda?
Good move on there.
Thank you. Next item is number 4, discussion of parkland. And John, Reddick, you're welcome to stay or go. Appreciate your help here tonight. But I will turn it over to Anna Mitchell to discuss the parkland use.
Thank you, Mayor. See you later, John.
Hi, John.
So earlier this year, staff was approached by a developer to have an outdoor area in our courtyard park. The area that is 111 North Bridge Street, known as the alleyway, which isn't necessarily an alleyway, right next to what we know as Humphreys. The proposal submitted is also included in the packet that was sent to you, as well as a map of the area that is being considered for this situation. Staff came to the board around May in a work session to talk about different options. The board directed staff to research different avenues of how to approach this situation. And through that, staff was able to come up with 3 possible situations that we could move forward with. The land that this is proposed on is city land. It's part of the adjacent courtyard park. And it's to construct a patio with no financial help from the city. And the assumption with this is that this would be a private use only, not a public use. This proposal has also been reviewed by both the Parks and Recreation Committee as well as the Main Street Group, and favorable comments coming from both of those groups, and they are okay with moving forward in some form or fashion. So of the 3 possible paths forward, we have an option to lease the property, an option to sell the property, and of course, our constant option to do nothing. With our leasing the property option, staff would issue an RFP for the lease. Pros would be any improvement on the property would be accepted as city property. It would be maintained as city property. If the lease would be terminated at any point, any construction or structure that would be done on that property would then be turned over to the city. Insurance and maintenance would be solely on the private business, with the city listed as an additional insured. And then, of course, if we have a lease going on with the property owner, the city would benefit from the revenue of that lease agreement. Cons associated with leasing, the land, as I've mentioned, is currently parkland, which is where alcohol is not permitted, except on temporary basis for short-term events. to allow for consumption of alcohol, which I do believe the developer has the intention of having alcohol out on this patio. We would have to do further research to figure out how to allow that on a long-term basis. Because we currently don't have an easy avenue of accomplishing that. Another con to this situation is the construction of the patio would decrease parking and ease of accessibility to the parking behind the courtyard park stage. There still would be accessibility to it though through the opposite side of the stage. Option 2 is the sale of the property. Again, city staff would release an RFP for the sale of that certain part of land. Pros, as the property would no longer be public land, process of doing private business on public land would not be necessary. So we wouldn't have any issues with the alcohol or any insurance issues. Anything happening on that land would be solely on the landowner. Cons, the city would not have any say other than codes set by planning and zoning on what happens with the property. The construction of the patio would decrease the parking as the same as leasing option. And then new property lines would need to be drawn to accommodate the sale. And that is the assumption that the owner of Humphreys would be the one who would be the landowner of the new parcel of property land. And then on to option 3 is to do nothing / provide alternatives to that location. We're willing to discuss other alternatives with the developer to a patio that's maybe on a different portion of land, to behind Humphreys, maybe on the roof of Humphreys. Pros to this would be nothing would change. Parking would not be decreased. Access continues to the stage. Existing space that is available is being used by that property owner. Future complications due to possible new restaurant owner is minimized, if not eliminated altogether. So we have seen in the past that building being owned by several different people. So doing nothing with that piece of property would be minimized.
So one correction on that part. In my lifetime, I think that building's had 3 owners. It was the brick house forever. Then Casey's bought it, they owned it and released it to Kennedy's after their restaurant closed, and now it's owned by the new owner.
Take that out of the memo then.
The brick house was there for many, 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 many years.
Okay. And then as far as cons to the do nothing, if the property owner decides not to go with any of those alternatives that staff has expressed, the outdoor dining feature would not be available for the public to use with that restaurant. Staff is currently seeking for direction on which one of these options you would like for us to continue with. Of the 3, 2 of them are issuing a specific RFP, and the third is to do nothing at this point and possibly have further communications with the owner of Humphreys, the Humphreys building.
On a one point of clarification as well, I'm pretty sure there's a separate owner of the land and the building currently, and then an operator of the business. Is that correct for Humphreys?
Yes.
Yeah, and for those of you that don't visit downtown nearly as much as some of us, a lot of those parking spaces are sometimes used by one of the other adjacent businesses for broken down cars. You know, our other city lots have some rules on that stuff, and this one doesn't because it is parkland. We haven't really had anything posted there of towing cars or moving cars or anything like that. So, and Humphreys is the ones that, I mean, if they do use those spots for their business, they're well aware they're giving them up. So, and 2 weekends ago, we had an incident somebody pulling out of that alley and hitting a kid. So, you know, people do use it for a cut through when there's events through downtown too. So streets were closed, but they still use the alley. I honestly,
If we leave, go ahead.
I say I'm all for selling it. It's, you know, the easiest, cleanest way to do it. And with all the towns I visited in the last month, looking at downtowns in these smaller communities, Colorado, Kansas here, people are dining more outdoors. Zona Rosa, a lot of people, the outdoor dining is becoming, 54th Street's going to expand. They're taking the park that was behind them and turning it into outdoor dining. People don't really want to be in a restaurant. Not everybody wants to be in a restaurant. Dan, I know your tables outside are usually pretty full too when I drive by. So go ahead, Alderman Kavilsky.
I was going to say, if we did decide to go the lease route, how hard would it legally to be able to change the alcohol use out there?
I think I would defer to John on that one. Right.
Yeah, he's on mute.
That's an issue. It may be that we'd have to address. I'd have to look at it more. When we first addressed this, that was an issue that we raised. And with the indication, if you all were interested in the lease, we'd go back and revisit it. I think that's problematic, to be honest with you. We've either, you can't issue, in a general sense, you can't have ordinances that apply only to certain places other than planning and zoning, which you can clearly do that way.
Yeah,
I mean, can we deem it not parkland? I mean,
well, certainly if you sell it, you're not, it's not going to be parkland anymore.
and I know that was I know that was part of the reason the Legion Park issue happened from when Heritage used to be Legion Park and the Legion moved out to the highway. Is the alcohol was part of the argument there, is not having it in the park.
Yeah.
I just didn't know if there was a way to deem it not parkland, and I don't know if there was another
It'd still be city
way to
land.
list it.
We city land. So if you're interested in the lease, frankly, I've got to look some more because it doesn't, there isn't anything that jumps to mind on a simple way to address that issue.
I mean, I'm all for selling it. It's just, you know, you always have in the back of your mind, what happens if the developer goes belly up? Who's going to be responsible for it?
Wouldn't be any different than any other piece of land.
True, I know.
Yeah.
Maybe we buy it back at a discount. We get a whole restaurant there. Yeah. I'm betting on our downtown doing well, so I prefer to dine outdoors. Alderman Chevalier, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily have a problem with selling it, other than, you know, that's like really, really close to, you know, where we have a stage and other things. I mean, I just don't want to see any conflicts. If something does go on down there, like they have some sort of an event or something like that, and it bumps up against someone else who's using the courtyard and it disrupts it somehow. I mean, if we don't have any way to fix that, then I think that might be a problem.
Yeah, and that already happens today, right? We already see events going on the stage in Humphreys and at the distillery, and you can hear 3 bands from one spot in downtown. So, you know, I don't know that they're going to have music out on the patio, but yeah, you never know. But again, they've been pretty good about when there is something going on in the square, they don't have music or they close their doors down. So
Very good about it now, but we don't know what the future holds, right?
right.
Or just for even people, they're dining and there's a band on the stage. It's gonna, I mean, I don't know if I would want to be eating dinner and having a loud band right beside me, but then I could get up and leave. I get that, but.
Alderman Sarver.
I'm okay with selling it. I think it'd be a great addition to our downtown.
But I say sell it too.
Alderman Atkins.
I like the selling part, but the leasing part, if they do leave, whoever it might be, we would have to be there to take care of whatever's left over. And it's just going to be an additional cost to us. One thing I would like to see though, is if we do sell the land to them, maybe consider some of that money being used for a petition or a partition rather behind the stage. So we don't see what we think is the alleyway and behind the car dealer or the car repair shop and behind Humphreys. But I like the idea of just selling it.
Can we make, I'm sorry, can we make a, some sort of a stipulation that if we do sell it, that they actually have to build what they're supposed to, what they're planning on building, or
Well, that'd
Are
be
we
part
just-
of the art. That'd
we
be part
lose
of the
everything?
that'd be part of the RFP process, right?
Oh,
We'd
yeah,
have to-
okay,
It'd have
okay.
to be a proposal on what they're going to build, not just selling the land.
Okay, true. Yeah.
John, heartburn with that? You're on mute.
Muted.
Reddick, you're on mute.
If we sell it in fee, they're gonna have the right of all ownership to it. However, it's still gonna be subject to all the zoning that we've got down there. So we can't look at it, in my mind, in just, if we do something less than selling it in fee and putting that in the RFP, I'm just gonna have to look at the mechanics of how you do that. Otherwise, we got a zoning issue, and everybody who does anything down there is gonna have to comply with the zoning down there.
So you're saying we just sell it? We don't have to put it out as RFP. We just sell it. We list it as a piece of
No,
property.
you've got to go with an RFP.
Right.
Then because we're not going to sell it to John Doe.
Right.
We're going to send it out there for bid, and then the city will take the best bid, and then go from there.
But it's just as a land sale. We don't have to do it as a project.
Correct.
Okay.
To me, that would be the sale. Now, if you want to do something other than that, we'd have to look at the mechanics of how much. If we retain, in theory, yeah, I can do that. You could do it in such a reversion back type of issue. It's going to be worth less when somebody buys it, if they're buying less than the ability to do anything with it. But in theory, yeah, I can do that if that's what you want. I can draft something like that.
Yeah. I think just if we just sell it as a land sale, then that's the cleanest way to do it. Alderman Hartman?
No, I completely agree with the board. We should sell it. Question for John, because my background's in real estate and I do practice real estate. Is there such thing as a first right of refusal if they decide the landowner closes the doors, or the building closes and changes hands, and let's say it closes? Is there opportunity for the city to buy that back, or is that not prevalent in deals like this that the city has in RFPs?
You can do that. You can do a first right of refusal, or what I was saying as a reversionary interest or something of that nature. So yeah, you can do it. Obviously, the ultimate price is going to be paid for it would be less if you're going to require that the city would take back a first right of refusal on the sale. But yeah, that can be done.
Okay, so it sounds like the consensus is to sell it. Does anybody else want to put a first right of refusal or any kind of stipulations on it?
I don't think it could hurt. I think it'd be a good idea.
Yeah, I think whatever we can do to protect the stage area, in essence. I mean, I'm very concerned that if something goes south, that it could impact events that are going on down there at the square, and that's, you know, whatever we can do to protect from that or mitigate that somehow is what I would recommend.
I don't understand that, John. I mean, what are you talking about? I mean, after they buy the land, build their area?
Well, yeah, I mean, if they do something that's obnoxious or you know, whatever to the rest of the area, like let's say some kids are rent out the square to put on a Halloween dance recital or something, right? And then you have something going on in the back where there's like they're playing music or they're doing some other activity that's interrupting what the kids rented out the square for. You know, I just feel like that if we sell that land, we have no control over what goes on back there.
So that we're clear on here, a first right of refusal to me would be that if they decide to give up ownership, they've got to give the city the right to buy it back under a formula or some, at least match whatever offer they've got from a third party. What I'm hearing you talk about, John, is a little differently. It's more like a development agreement where you're going to control the activities on the land. And if you want to control activities, it's easier to do that in a lease setting where you can set up why they're leasing it, et cetera, than it would be to sell the property. And that's just me.
Yeah, and that's why.
But
That's why-
even if we lease it out, I mean, even today with them not owning it, it's hard to regulate what they're going to do anyway. They could have people on the patio causing all kinds of noise when somebody's on the stage performing, and we have no way to really stop that other than our other ordinances and codes where we'd call law enforcement, and we have no noise ordinances and public intoxication and other things that could be used from that enforcement side, right? So the hypothetical of that happening, I think, is pretty low risk.
Mayor, I would think that our development department and everything that's in place would hopefully calm the thoughts of something obnoxious out of code. And I guess Jack is on the call. I would like to hear his opinion on that. But I think everything that we have in place from a city perspective will protect the city, and as long as they're following the process.
If I may, if we sold it, my initial comments to Anna and Cynthia on this were that I thought we might have issues trying to do a subdivision of land to sell that tract separately. I've double checked the B4 regulations, and ultimately we could do a separate subdivision so that parcel itself would be restricted. The easier way of a sale, if it was a sale of land directly to the adjacent property owners, to do a boundary line adjustment, and it makes it a lot easier from our perspective because it's not a subdivision of land, it's adjusting things. But it could be sold as a independent parcel of land. So it would basically be two lots, and whether John's expressed concerns about how to do a reversionary clause, and obviously I would agree with John's estimation on that. It gets problematic and it kills the value. But if somebody puts a building there or puts a structure there of any kind, we've got noise regulations that we can address, but those come at 11 o'clock. So they can have a band inside their building with the windows open until 11 o'clock, cranking up noise. After 11, they have to have, our noise ordinance has a protected measure on it. But other than that, there isn't a lot of zoning issues that we can address. Any use has to match the zoning, but we would go through that process on when they pull a permit to do the construction. Is that use, does it meet our standards?
Jack, one of the concerns I might have is, and we talked about this a little bit because one of my concerns early on was the setbacks, and you addressed those in an earlier meeting. In the context of this evening's meeting, though, if we're going to talk about a first right of refusal or reversionary clause, if we combine those lots, what does that do to that option?
And that was the point of me mentioning that.
Yeah.
We have the ability to combine the lots or to do them separately. If we combine the lots, I think it abrogates the opportunity to do a reversionary clause, because now we are one big lot that's changed the boundaries, and it gets really sticky to unweld that change. If we sold it separately, it would be easier to do those those uses that, or if we wanted to put a reversionary clause in it of some kind, if it was subdivided, it would be easier to do.
Is the fact that there are going to be 2 lots going forward if we use a first right of refusal or reversionary clause, is that going to affect your setback issues?
No, that's
Okay.
why I wanted to confirm that, the setback
Okay.
issues. I thought we had a minimum lot size issue that I was able to confirm this morning. And if it came up, I would be able to address it. So there is no minimum lot size. So it could sell to literally anyone who wanted to buy a 20-foot wide strip. It's 120 foot long.
Okay.
I'm gonna start selling inch acres in downtown, Jack. 1 inch by 1 inch. Let's subdivide.
And as John mentioned earlier, I think the value of that would get really, really, really low because you can't do anything with it.
Yeah, they did that in a town once and sold little mini homes you could put on it, all kinds of stuff. All right, so staff, do you kind of have the direction you need for us to draft something? Sounds like we want to sell it and sell it as a separate lot, so we have a right of first refusal if something happens.
Yeah, I think we have our notes and we'll start working on our fee for sale.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is our favorite thing to talk about in every 10 years, because every other time it doesn't really matter that much. So census data and ward boundaries. Jack, what do you got for us?
Well, a couple of things. First, if I could, I'd ask Linda to pull up those maps, share her screen with the maps on it. There's 3 pages, there are 3 different ones. And while she's pulling the first map up, Exhibit 1, I'll, if you haven't read through the staff report in, with fine-tooth comb, I'll give you a big overview of it. Based upon our first meeting in August, we laid out the standards that came from John, what we had to look for, what we needed to do. And coming out of that, it was try to divide the city into 3 north, south, and center wards, if at all possible. First step we took in doing that, once we got the census data, was to add up the current ward numbers to see if we had a deviation greater than the maximum allowed of 10%. And I apologize, in my memorandum to you, I identified Ward 1 was the first one I counted, and that was wrong. It was Ward 2. Ward 2 was substantially, by itself was 11%, so it was over where it needed to be. And I don't think I've ever provided to anyone other than Cynthia this morning or yesterday afternoon, the current ward boundaries as they set with the current census data, the up-to-date 2020 data. Ward 1 has 3,425. Ward 2 has 3,088. And Ward 3 is 3,893. Keeping in mind that our plan is an ideal ward of 3,469. That's the population divided by 3, roughly. That's as close to a whole number as we can get, so we put it there. So using the map, we started at the north and worked south, trying to figure out a nice straight line. At the bottom of that was roughly 180th Street, and that totaled 3,031. Linda, can you scroll down just a bit? There you go. That's good. So you can see that line that was drawn gave us 3,000. And then as you're looking at sorry, and I'll pull something up here that'll help. We're limited with with tract boundaries, the census tract, and this 474 number you see in the center of where Greyhawk is a big block that would work well if we could divide it up elsewhere, but we can't. So Linda, if you'd scroll down to the next exhibit. So based on that, exhibit 2 here, we adjusted that line a little bit by scroll a little further down. I apologize, Linda. There we go. We added that into the north. That gave us the 3485, which is real close to our ideal number, but it created the same issue that the board had indicated was its primary driver to change the boundaries between 1 and 2. And that was it isolated off to the side here. You can see the isolation of Harbor View gets isolated off to the side by itself without no other city attachment to it. There we go. That's even better, Linda. So we looked at it from that perspective. We could get the numbers all to work fairly well, to be quite frank, on trying to get them all as close to equal as possible. But because we can't divide the 474 up, we had to isolate that subdivision Harborview over there. It's got 1,085 people in it by itself. So Linda, if you could scroll to the third and final exhibit. Exhibit 3, we flipped the script a little bit. We still have, it's not a straight line, but it allows us to not isolate any subdivision area, neighborhood area, which was one of the goals. And we've done that by moving the boundary north to take in Wildflower. And we go through that number, you get 3450 and 3476. That's the closest divisor that we could get to the 3469 between Ward 1 and Ward 2. So this one kind of, from staff perspective, seems to meet your goals the best. And lastly, Linda, if you'd slide down to the last page there, Ward 3 has not been discussed significantly in any of this, and here's why. That line was a real close to the old line. We took out an area here to there. That area, when you adjust that boundary there, that's the old boundary. When you adjust it this way, it gives us the numbers we need to make it work a little better. We can get 3483 this way, using that as the old versus new dividing line. There are 500 and some odd people in that. So ultimately, we've got a recommendation in the numbers using those lines as we showed, and it's ultimately up to you. We have a legal description that's ready to be put into an ordinance of the main one that we're recommending. We can get that to you at the next meeting. If you have tweaks, changes, proposals to a different map version, we can make that work too. That's how we got here and why we got here.
Jack, thank you for your work on that. It's been tedious and long. We thank you for your analytical details. I like how Exhibit 3 fell into place, but I'd be interested in hearing the rest of the board's thoughts.
Exhibit 3 is what I initially thought was the best plan.
Unless you give everything to Kelly and I, we'll go with the Exhibit 3.
Can you guys stop sharing so I can see the rest of the, I saw Scheller had his hand up. There you go.
Yeah, so I mean, I like option 3, right? That's good. One thing I'm curious about though is what I'm just thinking about growth. You know, are we even allowed to consider future growth in this at all?
No, we are not.
Okay.
Nope. And in the census data, they do a little of that, right? It's not an exact count, right? They can't get every single person. They can say, well, this is the closest we can get based on who's answered the doors and answered the things. But they do get some data from Brandy and Jack's department too to say, you know, how many houses do we have here and whatnot. But yeah, we can't say, well, this one might have this, you know, like that subdivision coming in south of Wildflower might have quite a few people, right? So that, we have to wait till 2030 to draw that line, John.
So there's no way to do an end around on that by because isn't there like a certain threshold that we have to keep like for a low versus high
Well,
to get out of compliance or something like that?
well, if you look
Yeah,
at our,
percent.
if you look at our current number, we're way off, right after what Jack said, because our numbers in the current wards are further than that deviation allows. But those lines were drawn before those people lived there, so.
But
The
what I'm
hardest
saying,
part to be- John, just so you know, the hardest part about that is we can't tell where the growth is going to be definitively. Is it going to be in Ward 1? Is it going to be in Ward 2? Is it going to be in Ward 3?
Yeah, because you know Dirk brought in that the apartment complex too, and the Commons has talked about apartment complex. We could see a bunch of units go up in Ward 3. Sorry, Marv, I know you said you didn't want all the, but honestly, you could see a ton of growth in 3, right? If the stuff around 144th develops and they're south or west of Major Mall. I know there's some land there that could easily be multifamily. We could see a huge. We could be moving that line further south on 3 in 2030. We don't know. We have no idea of knowing.
all right, then yeah, option 3 is awesome.
It makes things easier for you and Steve, right? You don't have to figure out what part of downtown is 2 and
True. I'm okay with option 3.
keeps everybody in their ward, keeps the numbers pretty equal. So I think we're good, Jack. You're muted.
I can have the ordinance prepared and up for the next meeting in October for first reading.
And those are the wards that'll be available for when people come to file in December, correct?
Yes, that's the goal, to have it done well in advance of that time frame so that the candidates know which one they need to sit in. Lastly, and it happened to work out this way because literally the last thing I even consider on this is incumbency, and none of your all's wards change. So we got lucky there.
Yeah, it would have been really difficult if Alderwoman Wilson was still in Ward 1.
Yeah, or Josh, yeah.
Yeah, or Josh, because that really threw the line off, right? Because they were the farthest north they could go, other than where Steve's at.
Yep.
Anything else? Anybody else have any other questions? Jack, good job, Jack. All right, if not, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion to adjourn the work session. We're going to use the same Zoom for a regular session, but I'm sure everybody needs a little bit of a break.
Mayor, I'll second that.
You make it, Alderman
Make
Harper
it, you're entertaining a motion, Mayor, to adjourn. Do I need to make that motion
Yep,
to adjourn?
We're good.
Yeah,
Have a second?
Yeah.
Second.
Second, Alderman Atkins. All in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Aye.
All right, all opposed, say no. See y'all in about 12 minutes. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you, John.
Bye, John.